Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, March 24th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over why this is not, in fact, the worst March Madness of all time and could end up being, in history, one of the best we've ever seen. In this segment, we turn our attention to the round of 32. All of the basketball this weekend was really good. There were a couple blowouts, but all in all, especially yesterday's games, there were a lot of great ones. We're going to go through the highlights for each and every single game, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, March 24th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit on the round of 32. This was one of the best round of 32s that I can remember in a long time. It came off the heels of what objectively was a disappointing round of 64. No doubt about that, but we covered plenty of that. Let's move on to the good. We're going to start off in the top left region for you. Auburn versus Creighton. This score didn't show the whole game, right? Auburn escapes 82-70, but Creighton was giving them a hard time. For a while in that game, it was close. Creighton was even winning for a while. They were hanging tough, especially in that first half, but Auburn turned it down the stretch. That's why they were the 1 seed. They were struggling heading into the tournament, but a game like that, after they were tested against Alabama State in the first round, might be able to get them going in a very important game in the Sweet 16. The game that they will be playing against, Michigan took care of business against Texas A&M. Texas A&M pulled ahead early, and it looked like Michigan didn't quite have the answers, but at the end of the day, the size and just the hot shooting took over. Michigan has 2 7-footers on their team, one of which we talked about, a portal addition from that FAU squad that ended up winning, making it to the Final Four, winning their region. This is a Michigan team that has steamrolled, found a way to get hot at the right time, won the Big Ten tournament, a Big Ten tournament that has produced a lot of really talented teams still here in the NCAA tournament as we hit the round of 16. Michigan gets past a top contender in the SEC, shows why they're dangerous and why the hot team is always one you want to put a wager on. Ole Miss, Iowa State staying up in that region, heading to the bottom half there. Iowa State just did not have the firepower. Ole Miss had a hot shooting night. They had one of their best shooting nights of the tournament, of the year, really, against an Iowa State team that just didn't have their best player. And we knew that was going to catch up to them eventually. They were able to dispatch Lipscomb, absolutely destroying them, really. Again, size helps against those mid-major teams when you're a power conference team like Iowa State. But it just wasn't enough, and Ole Miss finds their way past a beaten and battered Iowa State squad to advance to the Sweet 16. Then you had Michigan State escaping a game with the Lobos in New Mexico. New Mexico, a 10 seed that showed a lot of fight. They were up early. Michigan State goes on a big run towards the end of the first half. They show out their physicality, their athleticism, and really their clutch shooting. They're not a team that's known to shoot very well, but they hit a couple threes when they needed to, and their defense stepped up. More importantly, they were able to shut down New Mexico, and they were able to have a massive comeback, advancing to the Sweet 16. Heading up to the top right side of the bracket, we saw Duke take care of Baylor. This was one of the easiest games of the round of 32 for any of the teams. We saw Duke just be the better team, really, and that's all it came down to. Duke was simply the better team on this night, and because of that, Baylor just didn't have any answers. Cooper Flagg, Colin Knippel, these two guys, along with everyone else on that Duke team, continue to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win the tournament. They're playing like nobody else in the country right now. The final game of the round of 32 that nearly went into overtime, Oregon had a shot there. Arizona takes care of business. Caleb Love does his Caleb Love thing. He finishes the game, 20-plus points. He is incredible. Caleb Love is a flamethrower. He's someone that Arizona their success a lot of times depends completely on whether he has a good day or a bad day. And if he has a good day against Duke, it could be very interesting in the Sweet 16. But he had a good day against Oregon. Now, Arizona was not playing their best basketball. Arizona was playing very undisciplined. They had a tech called against them when they were hanging on the rim trying to get a dunk. They had a couple fouls called against them late in the game that really they shouldn't have had happen. They needed to be more disciplined than that. But they were able to take care of business against Dana Altman and a very good Oregon team. This is a Duck squad that has been making very deep runs into the tournament these last couple of seasons. It just didn't happen. They ran into a hot shooting Caleb Love, and that was enough for them to escape in a 7-point victory. BYU took care of Wisconsin in a dramatic end of the game. A lot of people had issues with the refs in that one. BYU, the 6th seed, one of the lower seeds to advance. They go on. They beat Wisconsin by 2 points. They almost choked that one away. They were up big. Wisconsin came all the way back in that one. They had a shot. I felt like maybe they should have tried to move the ball a little bit. They still had some time. They had about 6 seconds when that final shot went up on the buzzer. Instead, BYU is the one advancing to the Sweet 16. They get an Alabama team, and those two teams can shoot the basketball like nobody else. That game should be a lot of fun. Wisconsin's run ends early. They were one of those 3 seeds that I thought could make a deep run, but unfortunately, BYU escapes. Unfortunately for them, BYU gets the job done, escapes with a victory. Then Alabama, they just outclassed St. Mary's. St. Mary's is a slow-paced team. Alabama is a team that wants to run the court, score quickly and in bunches, and it kind of got St. Mary's out of their game. They just weren't enough. Their offense wasn't enough to go after Alabama. And because of that, now you only have 4 conferences left. There's no Big East. It's just the SEC, it's just the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12 left in this tournament. You've got Houston and Purdue as we make our way to the next region of the bracket in the round of 32 that advanced. Purdue was the first game of the round of 32. They just dominated that one against the one Cinderella that advanced. Their size was too much for McNeese to handle. McNeese got into a little bit of foul trouble. They didn't have the hot shooting like they did in the first half against Clemson. And we saw what happened in the second half when Clemson really started to get in. They were just in too deep of a hole to come back. They make that, instead of an 18-point deficit at halftime, a 2-point deficit at the end of the game. McNeese just was not enough. Purdue figured it out. They had their bigs with that pick and roll. They couldn't do anything to stop them. Houston and Gonzaga in a very good game, one that could have been potentially set up for a game of the tournament. Houston escapes. Gonzaga had a great push at the end. Gonzaga, for the first time in 10 tournaments, will not advance to the Sweet 16. They had a tough draw being an 8-9 seed going up against Houston. That's been very good, especially defensively, but these two teams went at it, and Houston found their way through. Illinois, Kentucky. This was the game that busted the final perfect bracket. Illinois was the team that they had. Kentucky escapes. Now they move on to play their rival in Tennessee, who also took care of business against a UCLA team that just pounced all over Utah State, nearly doubling them up in the first round. That game should be a lot of fun. But heading over to the bottom left of the region, this one was the best one. And I'm not pulling any punches here. This had all of the best moments. From Florida escaping UConn. UConn looking like the better team. Dan Hurley being Dan Hurley, getting mad at the refs, because of course he did. It's Dan Hurley at the end of the game, walking down the tunnel, basically saying that the refs screwed them out of this one. Florida made this closer than it should have been. They could not hit a free throw to save their lives down the stretch of this game, and UConn took advantage of that. For a lot of this game, UConn felt like the better team. Florida, of course, is one of the more complete teams in basketball. Florida snaps a 13-game winning streak by UConn in the tournament. Of course, they were the 2-time defending national champions. Dan Hurley's squad exits after a very successful season yet again. Again, much like Gonzaga, they just had a tough draw going up against a 1 seed, and a very talented 1 seed at that. Florida escapes, but it's not necessarily an easy one, and it's not going to let their fans rest easy. Neither is the team they're facing. both of these teams escape a tight one. This one went down to the buzzer. Maryland took care of business against Colorado State. Maryland, the 4 seed, hit the buzzer-beating shot. Derek Queen, clutch. One word to describe him. He went out there, asked for the ball, got it done when it mattered most for the state of Maryland. The Crab 5 advance, but this game was amazing. This was the first true buzzer beater, and what I mean by true buzzer beater is a buzzer beater that when the shot went through, it showed triple zeros on the clock. This was the first true buzzer beater since 2023 with Jalen Suggs' shot in the Final Four. Just the third one that has happened in the last 5 years. The last one that happened in the first 2 rounds, 2018. So we want to talk about buzzer beaters never happen. They don't ever happen. We think we inflate the number of buzzer beaters there are. This is a very, very special moment. And congrats to Maryland for making it to the next weekend. They should match up very nicely against Florida, and that game should be a lot of fun to watch. But then Texas Tech. They took care of business against Drake. Drake's just didn't have the offense. They kept it close for a little bit, but hot shooting from a Texas Tech squad, and combined with their defense, just makes it real tough to beat them. In the final game, Arkansas, the 10 seed, the Cinderella of this tournament, although we can use Cinderella in air quotes for them because this is a John Calipari coach team, got past St. John's. St. John's, coached by Rick Pitino, we got a matchup of legendary coaches in this one. Coach Cal makes it out of this one. The real thing that sunk St. John's ship is the thing that we were worried about heading into the tournament, right? It was their shooting. They could not make a 3 to save their lives. They were 2 for 22 from three-point land. Their best player, R.J. Lewis, 3 for 17 from the floor. They needed to make a couple of those threes, and they couldn't get it done. Arkansas, big, physical enough to go up against and play with this St. John's team, and that St. John's team just couldn't get balls to fall. Unfortunately for them, they're out of the tournament. Arkansas moves on. Coach Cal makes it back to the Sweet 16 after not having very successful tournament runs the last couple times out with Kentucky. Now both him and Kentucky make it back to the Sweet 16. The Sweet 16 should be amazing. As I said in the first segment, there are lots of amazing games, rivalries, great matchups in the first couple of games. One seed should get tested. A couple of them could even go down. We're going to talk about each and every one coming up in the next segment here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.